Before I came up, I was on the phone with Sheriff Truman in Twin Peaks. He told me they are onto something from Laura Palmer's diary, indicating 2 Coopers. And last night, I had another Monica Bellucci dream.
Welcome to Twin Peaks Rewatch. From Idle Thumbs, I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
On this episode, we are discussing Part 14 of Twin Peaks The Return.
This episode was written by Mark Frost and David Lynch. It was directed by David Lynch, and it first aired on August 13th, 2017, unless you lived in Germany, in which case it inadvertently first aired August 6th, 2017.
On this episode, Gordon Cole gets in contact with the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Department and has another Monica Bellucci dream. We're reacquainted with the Dale Cooper and Philip Jeffries of old. Chad gets nabbed. The Twin Peaks Sheriff's Department visits Jackrabbit's palace, and Andy enters the zone. James's friend Freddie tells his wicked Cockney tale. Sarah Palmer opens up to a guy in a bar. And the mythical Billy is once again mentioned entirely in absentia.
Yep.
That's what happened.
Season 4 is going to just be the story of Billy. It's going to be his alternate adventure that he's having over the course of this, where he just keeps going missing.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah.
So this was an episode with relatively few threads compared to some episodes of The Return.
It still managed, every episode includes a sliver of Kyle MacLachlan, but in this case, it was from archival footage only. So it was still starring Kyle MacLachlan.
Of mainly Fire Walk With Me, The Missing Pieces?
Yeah, that footage I think was in Fire Walk With Me, but it was cross-faded with a billion other things because the version of that scene in the theatrical film is just like a crazy...
Yeah, it's totally bonkers,
abstract montage. That scene also has some other weird stuff that we can talk about in a minute.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'll save it, I guess, for when we get there. But
overall, what do you love about this episode?
I really like this episode.
Yes, I did too.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm less sort of like emotionally charged from it because it's been at this point a few days since we watched it because of our travel issues. Yeah, so it's not as like
you're not like I just saw it.
Yeah, but I did really, really enjoy it. I liked it a lot. There was a lot of stuff in this episode that felt that felt very Twin Peaksy in sort of a classic way while still maintaining just this very specific vibe of The Return, which is something that happens sometimes in this season and sometimes does it, right? I mean, it seems like sometimes Lynch is not concerned with hitting that balance, which is totally fair enough. He's doing a new thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely fine. But, sometimes you get moments like the Vegas FBI agent, screaming at his underling and then slamming the phone as it cuts him instantly. I mean, little tiny moments like that are so pleasurable and enjoyable. That doesn't speak to the entirety of the episode or anything, but it's just an example of the kind of little... And, the whole thing with Freddie, which is ridiculous. I mean, it is so absurd, but it's also the kind of gentle absurdity that is totally at home in Twin Peaks.
Yeah, it's this episode served as a reminder to me that as Twin Peaks progresses, we often describe it, and it's often described as something that sort of changes form from era to era, sort of season 1 to late season 2 to Fire Walk With Me to season 3. But if you take Fire Walk With Me and the Missing Pieces included, what I'm about to say I think becomes relatively true, which is that Twin Peaks it's almost more additive than change.
That's absolutely true. That's a good point.
It keeps its past form and whatever it's in now along with it at all times. And this episode, I think, was a great example of that. Not only because it literally included Fire Walk With Me, but it had things that felt like Fire Walk With Me or The Missing Pieces, or you had the absurd window washer guy, which totally
that was fantastic.
And the story of is it Freddie?
Yeah.
I was going to say Freddy and his glove, and then went, oh, geez, that's Nightmare on Elm Street. But
it is.
Whatever. Or the Hulk, or he's named after a character from the Wild Bunch, actually. The fictional character is, but whatever.
Oh, huh.
it feels like a total just season 2 new character
Definitely,
to add in or something. We got it all this week. Twin Peaks seasons 1, 2, Fire Walk with Me, The Missing Pieces, and The Return all made appearances.
All represented, yeah.
Yeah, in this
Definitely.
week's episode of The Return.
Yeah. Well, do you want to start going through it?
Yes.
So we open up with Gordon Cole calling the sheriff's department, getting Lucy on the phone, and then talking to Truman, but not the Truman he expects.
Classic.
Yeah. I have to say this is one of those cases that was sort of reminded me of Truman talking to Hawk about the sort of symbol that looks like maybe the experimental model or whatever, and then saying, you don't want to know what that is. Why didn't, like, two law enforcement officers are talking to each other, why not have like a 5-minute conversation and be like, here's everything that's said, here's the context of what this was, here's like everything that we read from it, like here's something that occurred to us. Even if they have no conclusions, like, why not give him all the information they have? I mean, I understand the purpose of getting a snappy scene, but there are ways to communicate that has happened without showing us a 5-minute phone call. And then also, why not mention the room key? I mean, if you're bothering to mention this like totally esoteric, detail that may mean nothing and maybe some just mystical nonsense, but may also be very important, why not mention that this room key mysteriously returned? Because he knows that it did.
I felt the same way, and it's a thing. It's a place where I personally feel like Twin Peaks: The Return has kind of dropped the ball consistently, at least for me personally and my tastes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know, like, because this show has been so like long form and so withholding of these pieces actually coming together, it feels great as an audience member to see Truman and Gordon talk at all and for that information to be made at all.
Yeah.
But like, when you remember back to how it felt in especially the first season of Twin Peaks, when Albert would show up and Albert and Cooper would share
serious forensic stuff.
It was just down to the most absolute detail, and it was also very satisfying for the same reason, but it was like the nuts and bolts are gonna be laid out and they're gonna line up, and it's gonna be a big deal that those two characters shared information. And it seems like they're, in the best case, okay with stylizing those moments in this season, just sort of like you said, for flow or for just sort of weird dramatic purposes. But the less charitable read on it is that they deliberately don't have the characters share all of the information so that they can keep drawing things out longer.
Yeah.
And I don't mean draw things out longer in terms of like, just the show's taking forever. I mean the way that a lot of modern TV does, where when characters share information, they'll always withhold half of it so that there's just another question in the air longer.
Yeah. I don't know what the specific motivation is or anything, but the end result is kind of frustrating, given that Twin Peaks has demonstrated lots of ability in the past for characters to just act in, despite crazy circumstances, act in way, especially law enforcement characters, to act in the way that they would if genuinely presented with this information and having to make as much of it as they can.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a bummer, but oh well, what are you going to do? So we go from that into this, there's discussion of the whole history of the Blue Rose cases, going back to the original one featuring Gordon Cole and Albert Jeffries investigating in Olympia, Washington, and finding two women, both of whom seem to be the same person, Lois Duffy, one of whom disappears, and the other of whom drops a gun and is arrested for her own murder, effectively. Had we ever heard anything about this before?
No, I don't think so.
This seemed like totally new information. Any thoughts?
No, not really.
Yeah, me too. It was kind of just like, okay, yeah, this is what they're doing now. They're talking a lot about this stuff.
It's a very different thing than Gordon Cole and Sheriff Truman talking to each other, but it was another example to me of feeling like, as an audience member, as my understanding of the connections going on in the story and sort of the overall history of the world of Twin Peaks, as my knowledge of that and as the character's knowledge of it expands, it's exciting, but it's running parallel with disappointment for me, because I can feel the size of the world and the possibility space of the world and sort of how wide-reaching all of these things could or couldn't be collapsing down. Like, when I think about who Gordon Cole and Albert and Cooper were at the beginning of Twin Peaks. It felt like Gordon Cole's the director of the Philadelphia Bureau of the FBI, and then on the side he has these weird sort of unquantifiable things that are Blue Rose cases, and for all we knew at that point, the Laura Palmer Bob thing could fit in only because it's just absurdly violent or like unknowably weird or touches too many points of jurisdiction, or it does like scratch into the supernatural, but no. It doesn't, and you know, Cooper is an FBI agent who's been an FBI agent forever, and he stumbles into this strange case. Mostly, I think it was because Teresa Banks crossed state lines is why it becomes an FBI case in the first place. And we're now in a place where there's one singular story thread of the story of the Blue Rose that was actually doppelgangers, that was actually connected to the Black Lodge, and every single thing is slowly feeding itself into being in service of this one storyline. Including
we get, you know, to the point that, I mean, it reminds me of sort of what happened to shows like The X-Files, you know, where everything gets so incredibly consumed by this one central thread that it starts to, instead of making that central thread, instead of making the universe of the show feel sort of huge and overwhelming and like majestic, it ends up making it everything kind of, I guess like you say, shrink down, feel a little bit tidy. Yeah. Because you start to just assume that every new weird or notable thing is just going to end up being folded in. I mean, to the point that, you know, and I don't have a strong opinion about this point in particular at this point, but, you know, Diane's sister being Janie E., for instance. Right. Like just everything is so like
I'm expecting condensed. Now that when in season 1, when Mike a.k.a. Gerard was brought in and talked about how he used to have a tattoo on his arm and then he cut it off, and he cries and says that the tattoo originally said mom. Like, we're now edging into a case where that could be retconned into being a reference to the mother character. Right. Like, the sort of other thought I have about all of this is the fact that the main thread is coalescing so hard into everything being about something. It's making me enjoy all of the weird sort of scattered, feathered edges of Twin Peaks Season 3 even more, because they're sort of this everything colliding, all of the things that are splattering off to the side as a result of it are, to me, becoming increasingly interesting, in part because they are their own weird things.
Well, on that note, I mean, we go from the stuff we just mentioned into, I think, 2 really good examples of that. The first of which is presumably a total throwaway gag, which is the window washer.
Yes.
Which was just one of those great, this is like so in David Lynch's wheelhouse, which is great because he's also the actor on screen while this is happening, which is just the incredibly extended, inexplicable moment that, because of the way Lynch treats all of his work, you can't help but think, like, does this mean, is this something? Is this is this character out here like himself a representative of the Black Lodge or a saboteur or something?
Just a wacky guy. Is he the equivalent of the guy boogieing out of the hallway in the pilot of Twin Peaks season 1?
And he's just probably that guy, right? I mean, that's surely what he is. He's just that guy.
He's just there to just disturb, distress Gordon Cole and also be a fucking weird, goofy thing.
But we linger on it so long that you just can't help it.
It gets weird. Yeah.
It's wonderful. I love it. I love it. That was great. Yeah. And his weird motions, I mean, he's being way more aggressive than that actual job.
He's just out of control. And it felt like the window was maybe just dry. It was just going like there was nothing.
Exactly. Yeah, it shouldn't be that loud if the window has any moisture left on it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was so good. I love it. That's it. It's just wonderful. So we get some more, I mean, I don't know how much you want to talk in detail about Diane sort of talking about what she talked about. I was kind of annoyed to hear yet another recap of the Briggs situation to Diane.
Yes.
Like, how many times do we need to be told what happened to Major Briggs?
The scene with Diane and Major Briggs and Las Vegas and Dougie Jones and Janie E. was another scene in which characters are sharing information that under any normal expectation for how a human being would act, everyone would be sharing approximately twice as much information as was shared. And it didn't quite happen. Where Diane gave very little information about Janie E. and Dougie. They didn't ask her very many questions about it. We also had seen that Diane had been texted previously. Have they asked about Las Vegas?
Right.
That didn't come back. Then when they called the Las Vegas office and they said there's, 20-something Dougie Joneses in the phone book, they didn't mention that her wife's name is Janie E., which would immediately cut it down to one Dougie Jones.
Yeah.
They have all that information, and they didn't share it, presumably because it allowed us to get the scenes that we got out of the scene, or out of that moment. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just going to... I don't mean to be a griper about it.
No, I know. It's
because, again, it then leads to
an amazing scene.
That outrageous scene in the FBI Las Vegas office.
Yeah, incredible. The thing that was... So I intentionally didn't rewatch... Well, I did rewatch that scene at the time, like 3 times, because
Because you couldn't not?
I wanted to write down his entire quote. Like, I take notes
Right.
on the things, and I wanted to write down his quote specifically, which is the agent says, "How will we find the right one?" And he replies, "Wilson, how many times have I told you this is what we do in the FBI?" And he's so furious.
He's like slamming stuff and his hands going crazy.
Oh my
yeah.
God, it's incredible. And the thing that I didn't like carefully check, because I like it existing in sort of a weird liminal space in my brain, is was there a little bit of Badalamenti brush drum sort of starting to creep in at the end of that scene?
I can't remember.
Which is then just slammed shut and never to return when the scene cuts?
Whether it was there or if your brain correctly added it in memory, it was there in spirit.
Either it was there, or there was sound design that was very similar, or it was just the way that he was as he was flailing around, he was
Right.
rustling his sort of clothes and whatever else
Right.
that were creating the effect. Any one of those things, but it had that total like like vibe that just creeps in,
And then it's back to Buckhorn.
Yeah, we never see them again. God, I loved it. I loved it so much.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Here's a question. I feel like, given the things we've been excited about and not excited about so far in this episode.
I liked it, Chris.
I did too.
Okay, good.
I did like it.
Yeah, I think that we've been coming across maybe as negative sounding people about
Haters?
this. As maybe we've come across as haters. I was captivated by the entire opening of this episode. I just also had a voice in the back of my brain running saying, why aren't they saying things that a normal person would say? But at the same time, like, just the aesthetics of it, the performance of all of it, the characterizations on screen, all really good.
Yeah, I mean, Cole, even though Cole is a serial offender with the things we've been complaining about, like, he's also just been totally on fire this season as an actual presence on screen.
Yeah, I did not expect or dream or hope that, or like dare to hope that we would get this much Gordon Cole and that it would be good.
Yeah.
Actually, a thing that, before we get into Cole's dream, before Twin Peaks: The Return showed up, there was the sort of negative side of the speculation as to why Twin Peaks was coming back, were people saying, Frost and Lynch just haven't been working in a while, and they got a paycheck, da-da-da-da-da.
That's what always one of these suppositions whenever anything comes back.
I would say that Gordon Cole's presence on screen in this season should be like outrageous textual evidence to destroy that theory. Like, if you can't look at that and go, okay, David Lynch, all the times over the years that he said that he loves Twin Peaks and is just like literally marinating in it as much as he possibly can, including himself being on screen in basically every episode, or at least the like super majority of episodes, always participating in or like bringing in his own acting major, like, great performances, aside from the fact that he's directed all of it. Like, anyway, he clearly loves this shit. He's so into it.
I rewatched recently some of the material from Louis C.K.'s show Louis, I believe 3-episode arc in which David Lynch plays a CBS producer evaluating whether the Louis C.K. character has the chops to replace David Letterman on Late Show. And I remember at the time, I think that arc is one of the greatest pieces of television in, like, I don't know, the last decade easily. And I remember reading Louis C.K. talking about trying to get Lynch to do that, and Lynch was very reluctant. And, as someone who is not an actor and doesn't really like think of himself as an actor, he was just not. He had to be really persuaded to do it. And it was an utterly brilliant, inspired, incredible casting choice. And as someone who had seen the entirety of Twin Peaks and done a podcast about it and enjoyed, to the extent that he was present in that show, his characterization of Gordon Cole. It was fun to watch because that character is absolutely not Gordon Cole, but also has some of those sort of big blustery mannerisms that Cole has, just because that's what
how David Lynch that's just what he does.
Exactly. But the difference in how it was characterized really does suggest this is someone who does know how to intentionally modulate and present himself on screen in an intentional way, right? He's not just, quote, playing himself in a sort of like meaningless sense where it's just, it's just David Lynch being David Lynch. No, he's making intentional choices. And he hasn't done much of that in his life or career, right? And that wasn't that long ago. And I wonder if there was any part of him that felt, as an actor, not a writer or director, but because he didn't write any of that material, but purely as a screen actor, which is not something that has been a big part of his career, was sort of reactivated by that experience.
Like maybe made him think, maybe I can do it.
Yeah, or just like would be interested in, or like just had it on his mind. I don't know. It's really worth watching those episodes, both because of Lynch's performance and also because of just the overall like writing and conception of the whole thing, which is amazing. But it's, I don't know. I by complete coincidence, I ended up on some of that stuff on YouTube the other day and was thinking about that, given what a huge presence Cole is in this season of Twin Peaks.
He's basically our Cooper surrogate.
Yeah, he is.
Including him jumping into the room in the middle of
time.
in the middle of Albert's
Coffee
Blue Rose
time.
explanation and just give it a huge thumbs up. Like he is the provider of that meme.
Yeah.
Like the classic, like just looping Cooper
The
gif of him giving
policeman's dream.
Yeah,
it's just that guy.
Yeah, it's Cole this season, which is weird and unexpected, but he's doing a good job.
Yeah,
and also he has dreams.
I mean, it's funny. It's funny that you. Sorry, this is digressing so much from the episode, but it is funny that he is that character. Given that, I mean, you could almost read that as sort of like a narcissistic thing, right? I mean, the character that everyone wants to see, or that a lot of people have been clamoring to see return. Lynch is just playing. He's just like, nope, I'm that now. But except which I think is that is not my take on it, because Kyle MacLachlan himself, even though he wasn't in this specific episode, but in general, is just an absolutely massive dominating force. I mean, Cole gets that sort of replacement Cooper role, but then Kyle MacLachlan, as not just Cooper but these other sort of versions of Cooper, is given just an absolutely monumental task.
Yeah, he's sort of he's still obviously the main character and also the most consistently sort of episode stealing actor of the season.
Yeah, in multiple roles. I mean, it's kind of amazing.
And I had always hoped. I mean, I said earlier that I didn't dare to hope that we'd get this much Gordon Cole, but separate to that, I'd sort of. It tracks that in Twin Peaks, Hawk is the person who's trying to find Cooper, and the FBI, Gordon Cole is the person who's trying to find Cooper, because just looking back into the original two seasons, when you think about who Cooper's like closest connection was, like I always think back to like scenes, like the occasional moment where those two characters, were Gordon and Cooper, would give a thumbs up to each other or pat each other on the back and stuff, and it tracks that. If the plot that they want to have is this, it's going to be Cole, and on the other side, sort of the person digging around into the lodge would be Hawk, or maybe Andy. Who's to say?
Well, yeah, especially in the absence of the original Truman.
Yes.
In the absence of Harry.
Yep. Yeah. In a world where that actor wanted to come back, it would be Hawk and Truman, which would be outrageous. I'm so sad that we didn't get to see
let's not go there.
Old Truman.
So sad.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if you heard, but he's sick.
I did hear that. He's in the care of the doctor.
Yeah, I wonder if you've heard that.
I have.
Okay. Anyway, you want to talk about Gordon Cole's dream?
Yeah. I had another Monica Bellucci dream last night.
Another one.
Yeah. Which gives, that was so wonderful, because you get Albert's face of just, oh my God. Like, are you serious? Can we fucking cut it with this? But then we go to a dream in which actual Monica Bellucci is there in the dream. Incredible.
She'd been announced as a character in Twin Peaks for a long time.
I had totally forgotten.
She was one of the people.
When I heard that name, I didn't think of anything.
Even knowing that, it didn't matter because I sort of had been like, oh, is Monica Bellucci going to show up somewhere? Like, da-da-da-da-da. Okay. She's playing literally herself in a dream that Gordon Cole had.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yep. Yeah.
Wally Brando's weird walk-on cameo has been one-upped and destroyed by literally Monica Bellucci as herself.
You know what I really like about that detail? I mean, we were kind of talking about how some of what this season has been doing has been sort of to shrink the world by way of allowing the Central Lodge narrative to put its tendrils into literally everything. You know what I like about this dream is that it kind of, I think it actually puts some of this stuff back in more of the early season 1 context, where it's not, I mean, unless Monica Bellucci herself, the actual person, is somehow legitimately like a crucial component of the lodge and all this. But
that's like the Austin Powers version of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, that is not, my assumption is that is not the case. My assumption is that this is getting into the zone that that in the first several episodes of Twin Peaks were back when, episode 3 or whatever it was actually called Cooper's Dream, and the existence of this place was not like necessarily a physical alternate reality, but a sort of subjective dream state. And we get information in the dream that is surely legitimate, right? I mean, it is actually coming from this other place. It is real, actionable kind of visions and information, but it is intermingled with Cole's own subjective, like, presumably he has other Monica Bellucci dreams that are not lodge related. I'm just guessing, like, given his predilections, right?
Yeah.
Like, I really, really, really like the commingling of this, like, core kind of lore stuff with just the character's own state of mind, like preoccupations, whatever else, because that feels very much in keeping with the push and pull of subjectivity and lore that has always been part of this in Twin Peaks, and then in this season has sometimes been in danger of being totally like subjugated by everything is canonical lore, and it is like objectively this way, and everything ties into everything. And I really like that. It pulled back a little bit in a way.
Yeah, and it was handled very, very well.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about what was said inside that dream? Because that was some of the most notable dialogue in this episode.
Yeah.
I didn't write down the quote, though, did you?
Oh, the thing that
we are like Monica Bellucci says, we are like the dreamer who dreams and lives inside the dream. But who is the dreamer?
And lives inside another dream. But who is the dreamer?
And lives inside another dream, but who is the dreamer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to note, I really love, as both a character detail of Gordon Cole and just sort of an example of Twin Peaks' ridiculous universe building, that he introduces that with, then she said the ancient phrase, as though that, like...
I know.
That is, I love it. I love that. That is totally in the spirit of Twin Peaks, going all the way back to the beginning of the season, where there's just totally unremarked upon assertion that, like, oh right, this is an ancient phrase. Everyone knows that ancient phrase. We are like the dreamer who dreams and lives inside another dream, but who is the dreamer? Maybe it is. Maybe that is in fact an ancient phrase of which I am unaware.
It was a really evocative phrase and felt totally true to so much of the sort of ethereal and ephemeral stuff inside of Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I guess it's driven home as far as just that feeling is immediately carried forward by that dream really seamlessly transitioning into that piece of cut footage from Fire Walk with Me.
Yeah. Oh, that was so good. It felt so, like, vital and present, and it didn't feel at all like how archive footage sometimes feels, which is that it's sort of a stopgap measure. Or I mean, it weirdly, not weirdly at all. I mean, in fact, I don't know why I'm saying weirdly. It's just baked in. But the lack of modern day sort of full control of his faculties, Cooper, I think really aided how much that archive footage hit hard. Right? I mean, it was. I think it was more impactful than if we'd had, a dozen episodes of current modern Agent Dale Cooper marching around doing things. And I mean, obviously, if that had been the case, maybe this would have been treated differently, whatever. But given the reality of where Twin Peaks: The Return is right now, it was really fertile ground for that footage, I think, punching hard.
That moment has always been evocative, even in the original released edit of Fire Walk with Me, when it's intercut with
all
screaming,
overlaid,
Jeffrey's yelling, "Do you know who that is?" Paired with, the last thing we've ever seen of Cooper at the end of season 2, paired with the what Laura's told to write in her diary, has always sort of felt like that's the germs for the story that we're seeing in season 3. But like you said, having that show up now with like seeing full-bodied Cooper there, but then seeing seeing our one glimpse of Bowie this season, probably just yelling that that something's wrong with him after all of what we've seen, was really good.
Yeah.
Also, whoever the person is who did the color grading on that sequence and made it so perfectly make it so perfectly match the digital footage of Cole and Monica Bellucci. It was a perfect cut. It actually ended up feeling like a reverse of Cooper explaining his dream in season 1, where he talks about, I was 25 years older, and in that case they fake it by just putting old person makeup on Dale Cooper. But in this case, we have Cole saying, I was 25 years younger.
Yeah.
And the effect was just as good because they made the footage not feel like a jump to the past. It just felt like, I guess they shot this today somehow.
Yeah,
I know. Obviously, knowing they didn't.
And then also, I mean, not like goes without saying, but seeing David Bowie, knowing that he is now passed away. I mean, that's just one of those sort of meta elements that you can't really control for. But that whole thing I just thought worked so incredibly well.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, it's impossible to know how much of what's going on in season 3 was, seeded intentionally by Frost and Lynch 25 years ago. It's impossible to know how much is sort of implicit retconning, but I have to say it's unbelievable how well Jeffrey's saying, do you know, who do you think that is?
Pulling that
God.
Clip out.
You know what? I mean, I'm going to engage in like a kind of like fan speculation that I or fan sort of argumentation that I rarely do because usually I don't care, but I am going to say flat out that what I very much hope is the case with respect to Jeffrey's observing Cooper in that scene and sort of giving his warning. My hope is that it is not the case that Cooper has always sort of been some sort of like split doppelganger situation and this was all waiting in the wings somehow and this was like 100% destined to happen. My hope is that Jeffrey's presence saying, do you know who that is from some kind, is like he is basically fractured out of time. And like given that the future is the case that Cooper, enters the Black Lodge, is split into some kind of doppelganger situation. However that stuff happens. I don't know the mechanics of how it happens.
Right.
However that happens, Jeffrey's is like, just out of step with time and
has
reality.
Observed that has happened.
Yeah. And is his warning is coming at a time in which it may not be physically true at that moment, but is speaking to like the eventual reality and may exist for the purpose of being remembered by Cole 25 years later.
Right.
Like
Yep.
That was not the thing. Nothing I just said was very well stated. But
no, I think that you're probably right. Or even if you're not 100% right, I think that's basically what I took away as well. In part, I mean, thinking about that scene with Jeffries reminded me of all the things that surround it, which is kind of time slipping for all of those characters, especially for Cooper, because Cooper, right around that time, tells Gordon about a dream that he had where he can see some things from the future in the Laura Palmer case, but also right when Jeffries is appearing, time definitely slips in a weird way because Cooper sees himself on the TV security camera in Fire Walk with Me as he sees Jeffries walk around him.
Yep.
And those two things didn't happen correctly. But then Jeffries pops in and yells about there being two Coopers, basically.
Yeah.
One weird thing about this scene that's worth mentioning, just because it's interesting from a production standpoint, is that that's not David Bowie's voice in season 3. They redubbed those lines.
With who?
A different actor. They redubbed it with an actor named Nathan Frizzell.
Wow. Who
posted a tweet saying, because he's credited in this episode as just voice, and someone asked him what it was, and he said, I had what's his specific quote? He says, someone named Brett wrote him, and he said, "Hi, Brett. I was given the surreal task of voicing the great David Bowie in Gordon Cole's dream sequence. Honored to be a part of Twin Peaks." Then he must not have been supposed to say that because his Twitter account is now locked, and I think that tweet is erased. But there's a subtle change in his line.
Wow.
Which is which? Sorry. Let me just play the audio that I kept here.
Who do you think this is there?
That's the original.
That's the original.
Who do you think that is there?
That and this got transposed.
Huh.
And I'm not sure why they made that specific change.
Yeah.
But that change was made. And also it's strange that they recast the voice of Bowie. Like, I saw people speculating maybe it's for legal reasons or whatever. I don't think there's a way that it would be for legal reasons. They wouldn't have the rights to use their own audio.
That seems unlikely.
The more likely thing to me is that we're at some point going to hear...
If it were, I don't think they would have changed the word.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think... I can't speculate as to why they changed the word, but from a production standpoint, my guess is that they wanted a voice for Philip Jeffries who's going to appear on a phone call or something later on.
I think that would be my guess as well.
But whatever, that was very strange. I didn't notice it at first, other than I thought that was it didn't play exactly how I remembered it, but I couldn't tell because
I had this exact same reaction,
that scene
but I didn't know how to quantify it.
Yeah, that scene had also just been so scrambled because I'd seen it in the crazy edit of the theatrical cut of Firewalk with Me way more times than I'd seen it in the missing pieces, and I thought, is it an unused take or something? But no, it's just a re-edit, which is very strange. Weird production detail of that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. One more thing about Jeffries, not to just stay on the scene forever.
It's worth staying on.
But I feel like the totality of our exposure to Jeffries in this season, both through archive footage and through characters interacting with him off screen, through phone calls and just discussions. It also just, I think, ties in really, really, really well to his one previous appearance in the Twin Peaks world in Firewalk with Me. It was always a very interesting and striking choice to have him dressed the way he was dressed in Firewalk with Me, right? Especially seeing him contrasted against these FBI agents in their kind of standard black suit uniform, he's wearing kind of sort of like Tommy Bahama's sort of whatever sort of vacation clothes. And, or I don't know if that's the most accurate description of what he's wearing.
He looks like a man of leisure in his clothes.
Yeah. And I feel like it works really well in the context of the sort of vision of Jeffries that's being painted this season, which is that he seems to be someone who has gone native with the Black Lodge, or to some degree is capable of understanding and moving through it in a way that is more adept than other characters we know who have been exposed to it. I don't know if that's actually accurate, the things I'm saying, but that is the sense that I have gotten from everything we've learned about Jeffries, and I feel like it echoes really well in the context of him being dressed in this sort of outrageous and very visible and different way to his colleagues.
Yep.
In that one scene.
Yeah.
I just like that.
Yeah, it's good.
All right. So you want to move on to the Sheriff's Department, Twin Peaks Sheriff's Department?
Yeah.
Chad is arrested.
They've
been watching him for months.
Chad is arrested, but I don't believe that due process was maintained when Chad was arrested.
It's true. He didn't get his Miranda rights.
Just some bad law enforcing happening this episode.
Once again, Truman just doesn't mention something that should have been mentioned.
Yeah.
His rights.
His rights. Chad's going to come back on him hard. And that wacky judge is going to come back, and they're going to they're going to go to court in the Roadhouse.
They're going to drink more of those weird blue coffee drinks?
Yep. Yeah.
It's funny. I watched a YouTube by complete coincidence. I was not looking for this. I wasn't looking for anything Twin Peaks related. I was just watching cocktail videos on YouTube for some reason. It's not even a thing I normally do. And I ended up on a video of how to create that of someone's supposition of how to create that cocktail that the judge presents and the bartender present. That was the 5th episode of season 2, and the drink was called the Black Yukon Sucker Punch.
Okay.
Yeah, and I found the video that I found was by Cocktail Chemistry on YouTube, and the name of the video is just recreated Black Yukon Sucker Punch from Twin Peaks. And it's a really fun video. It's like a huge amount of work goes into recreating that blue foam and sort of using the shot of the bar to sort of reverse engineer what would have been like based on the ingredients.
What's on the shelf of the roadhouse?
Well, because there's
or
a coffee
yeah.
maker on there, and there's like stuff on there that's like, oh, okay, this actually makes sense in the context of the drink. You can hear a blender in the background, like in that scene, so she was probably using that. Anyway, it was fun. Why did I bring this up? I already forget why this came up.
Whatever. We're talking about the judge and
right.
Chad's rights being violated.
Yeah. So anyway, that guy will return with a Black Yukon Sucker Punch and get Chad probably even more arrested. So
it will in fact be Freddy who returns with the Yukon Sucker Punch.
That's true.
He'll crush the drink in his glove and then punch Chad through 15 walls.
That's true.
Chad's face will collapse in the way of Mr. C punching that guy in that bar with the huge, or in that shed with the huge TV in Montana.
It's true.
It's all coming together, Chris.
Oh, it all
this
makes
week.
sense.
So whatever. Now that Chad's out of the way, Jackrabbit's Palace.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We get a particularly extended exterior drone shot of the misty forests.
Yeah, which is the prelude to one of the nicest looking sequences.
Yeah, it was very beautiful.
It's really good to be out in the woods for an extended period with, like, it's been a while since there's been a Twin Peaks Sheriff's Department romp through the woods of Twin Peaks looking real nice as everyone just sort of sneaks around. And we got it this week, and it was really, really, really beautiful.
Yep. Did you when I was watching some of those early shots of that sequence, it seemed to me that there were shots of trees where you get bits of electricity Foley sound. Did you get that?
I think that was the case, and I think that there was even one insert shot of a power line running through the woods at that point. Yeah.
Right.
I think it was some of the same.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it was. I think there was a little bit of light bzz in there.
Yeah. So they get to Jackrabbit's Palace, which is a massive fallen tree, a massive stump of a fallen tree. It's a cool, dramatic-looking thing. What's funny about that is what I thought was notable, there's a shot when they are regarding it, and the camera does what I think of as a very sort of typical modern move to indicate majesty with the camera, which is to sort of push in as it angles upwards slowly. And I remember seeing that and at the time thinking, like, this feels like almost sort of a cliche of a shot. Like, doesn't feel like Lynch usually doesn't indulge in this exact kind of thing. But then I remembered someone on the forums posted a really great comparison of that tree stump against the big tower in the weird ocean.
The sort of purple, the purple weird ocean with the giant, or I guess the fireman Nay the giant, and it's where Cooper ended up transferring back to Earth and all that stuff. Yeah,
and I'm like, oh wow, that is a great little visual echo. It looks really.
You could probably play those two shots on top of each other, and the timing wouldn't be right, but the sort of feeling of the compositions, they evoke each other really cleanly, which is cool. Mm-hmm. But
I liked it.
Good. I'm glad you liked it.
Yep. This also just felt very classic Twin Peaks to me, that this special place is some like seemingly arbitrary landmark that in itself is not. This was a case where I liked that, in contrast to all of our sort of grumblings about Truman not saying anything that seemed relevant, this was a case where it makes total sense that Bobby never said, just so you know, Jackrabbit's Palace is just like a tree stump.
There's no reason.
Right? Because he obviously, given the circumstances and given what he knows about his dad, that is in itself, oh, okay, well, that means nothing. Like, it means...
It doesn't matter, because from a sort of human scale standpoint, it's all outrageously meaningful and gigantic that it's happening at all. It could have been like some rocks in a circle in the dirt, and it would have been fine. Instead, there's also some rocks in a circle in the dirt with a pool in it or whatever.
Right.
But
this was super fun because you also get just what has become sort of a classic thing with Bobby in this season of the show, in which he has this sort of like little I don't want to say. I was going to say smirking, but I don't mean self-satisfied. More of his
like,
sort of bemused.
He's like surprised to himself, just like, this like.
He's surprised, but
Yeah.
also knowing.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a knowing surprise where he's
Just
startled.
things are starting to mean things to him in a way that he
he's
didn't
startled,
understand.
But he's like, well, of course, this is what.
Yeah.
And he gets to sort of enjoy that while his colleagues just have no idea, obviously, what is going on at all.
Yeah.
And that's nice. I liked all that stuff. I thought it was really.
It
played
plays
well.
so well. Just the parts of the story of Laura Palmer or just the parts of the story of Laura Palmer that Bobby touched over season 1 are so specific and really different from the rest of the sheriff's department and really different from the rest of Twin Peaks. By being personal friends with Laura, but then his dad operates on this completely different echelon of all of it, and then Bobby, him ending up being the one who connects all of that stuff together really personally it's cool.
Yeah. Yep. So
it's cool, I say.
it is cool. I don't know. I don't actually specifically have a lot of, sort of conclusions or observations about these scenes in once Andy enters the zone, or whatever we call it.
I really like quite a lot that it's Andy who goes out of all of the characters.
I liked it a lot.
It echoed back to some of the cheesier, in my opinion, stuff in Twin Peaks season 2 about what is the White Lodge versus the Black Lodge and who is able to enter it and who isn't. All of the sort of like when it was tied to Glastonbury Grove and it was that sort of like arterial, the true of heart may enter and all of that stuff. Andy being the one who goes down to comfort this random woman that they find in the woods, and him holding her hand and just like.
Were you saying Arthurian or ethereal, or did you combine those words into?
I meant to say King Arthur.
Okay, okay.
Arthurian, is that what that is, or how's that? What is
Arthurian.
that? Arthurian.
Yeah.
That's the word I meant. Yes, Arthurian. Andy basically just being a true of heart good guy in that moment, and then him getting sucked up into the zone.
Yeah.
As it is canonically known.
Yeah.
By us enthusiasts.
No, I enjoyed that choice. I really appreciated that choice.
And I don't know what to make of all of the things that I guess the giant who was missed question marks and is now the fireman.
The fireman, yeah.
He showed Andy what looked to be visions of the past and maybe the future. The stuff with Andy and Lucy was footage we've never seen, but was clearly from the return.
Well, let me just list what he sees. So he sees the experiment. Or the experimental model, Bob, the gas station from episode 8, a woodsman saying "got a light," that classic screaming high school girl who showed up at the beginning of this season, as well as obviously was in season 1.
In the pilot,
we see Laura Palmer flanked by angels. We see Nido, who is the woman on the ground, who we saw earlier in the season, is also on the ground outside Jack Rabbit's palace.
She's the woman who I think her face was more sewn up when we last saw her, and now it looked like it was open wounds. But she's the one who's ambiguously helped or hindered Cooper during that stop motion sequence where she told him not to go into the outlet when it had the different number on it. Then they climbed up, and she just jumped off a ledge and disappeared, and then. That's at the same time as we saw Major Briggs say "Blue Rose."
Right. Yeah.
And now she's here.
We see Nido. I don't know if that's how to pronounce her name. Nido. We then see a sort of flashing of both Coopers back and forth
on the curtain, right?
Yeah.
I think they're against the whatever.
Yeah. We see a phone with a light on it. We see Andy and Lucy. We see Andy with Nido. And then we see the telephone pole labeled 6 that we have. It's obviously occurred a number of times in Twin Peaks.
I think twice.
Just twice?
I think it was in Firewalk with Me and this season.
All right.
Yeah.
And that's what we saw.
Andy seems to divine quite a lot of meaning from this. I mean, in the way that a dream works, where whatever the actual visceral experience is versus what your brain knows that any of it means, it seems like Andy comes out of it with some sense of understanding.
Yeah.
And everyone else seems to have slipped their mind that anything happened.
Right.
Almost.
They can't really recall.
Which is the second time in this episode that happens, because Gordon and Albert talk about not even really remembering Jeffries until Gordon remembers his dream
Right,
and
yeah,
goes.
I liked that detail that Albert sort of says, "Oh, I'm starting to remember this."
Right,
I really
'cause-
like that. That kind of fits in with what I was sort of speculating about of like the reason for Jeffries. I mean, reason is maybe too strong a word, but like, Jeffries appearing there is in part so it can be remembered 25 years later, right? I don't know. I mean, that seems like it kind of works.
Yep.
But, yeah.
It seems, also characters. I like that it puts normal human beings on Earth's comprehension of this place. It pushes it back into being dreamlike. Like when Cooper first experienced that stuff, a very similar thing happened where he woke up and immediately recalled as much of it as he could, but he also forgot pieces of it. Like Laura whispered in his ear and told him who killed her.
Yeah.
That information was lost and pieces of it faded and then came
That's
back
true.
over
That's
time.
true. Yeah.
And we're seeing that happen again.
Yeah.
Although we can counter that by explicitly having Sarah Palmer take her face off in real life later this episode.
Yeah.
But I liked that all of this stuff was sort of slippery dream logic where people are remembering things that they don't see and not remembering any of it at all. Like just that stuff felt super Twin Peaksy.
Yep. I agree.
Also, I really like that it's so good that Andy comes out of it sort of infused with this calm sense of purpose and understanding, even if he doesn't know tangibly what any of it means.
Yeah, it was nice both for the for the kind of Arthurian sort of like pure of heart kind of stuff you were suggesting earlier. It was nice because of everything you just said just now, and it's also nice for kind of the very simple, totally non-mystical, non-lore reasons for me anyway, that Andy has stuck around as this kind of mid-level figure in the sheriff's department for decades now, and it's nice to see him get to take charge of something conclusively and have there are certain qualities he lacks as a sheriff's deputy that are known to all, but there are also qualities he has, which is that he cares about people. I mean, he just like straight up really is like deeply empathetic. And
unending kindness.
Yeah, and that is something that was allowed to go into direct action, as he carries the woman and down and makes sure she's comfortable and so on.
The when we return from one other tiny detail about that scene before we get to the end of it, the vortex that Andy sees has a big white light color in the middle of it because I think it's the sort of little carved out hole in the ceiling of the room that he was in. I saw people point out that the one that Gordon Cole saw, because this is the second time we've seen one of these huge vortexes, had a huge black circle in it, and this one has a huge white circle in it. And people have said, is there actually a black lodge and a white lodge confirmed for the first time?
Right.
Because we've sort of seen those portals lead to two different places, one of which was
the woods, the sort of place we associate with the woodsman.
The woodsman on that staircase that looks very much like the place above the convenience store in Firewalk with Me. And this one now was in that old movie theater inside of the sort of pink ocean. So maybe they are two totally discrete places, but maybe they also just interconnect through each other, and we can't tell. But, when we come out of that sequence, it's we see all of the sheriff's department milling back to Jackrabbit's Palace from the place that was 200 meters away, and it looked very much like the woodsman milling around the convenience store, the gas station, same thing, whatever. Where they were sort of milling around and cross-dissolving inside of each other. I think that it was actually just showing them arrive over and over again in a sort of looping, stepped way.
That's what it was
but it was really evocative of that same that same motion. What does it mean? TBD, if anything, but it was cool. I declare it cool. Everything in this episode I just think is cool, Chris.
Oh yeah,
cool episode of Twin Peaks.
I'll just for the record, I'll just state what Andy says, which when he returns with Nido, he says, "She's very important, and there are people who want her dead. Don't tell anybody about this." I liked the terseness of that delivery. So anyway, they take her to a cell for her own protection, And
Don't tell anyone about this. I'm going to put her in a cell next to Chad.
yeah, I know. Well,
Well.
whatever. I mean, I don't think Chad
Chad doesn't care.
has enough comprehension of anything to.
Chad is a master of lodge lore, Chris.
Oh, that's true.
He kept Wyndham Earl's CD-ROM.
Yeah.
As he found it as a boy.
Amazing. This was a very I thought this was a good weird scene. This long scene of the woman emitting what sound kind of like monkey sounds.
Yeah, kind of
bit.
like weird breathing mixed with monkey sounds.
Yeah, and then Chad bewildered by that, and the other inmate who has just a dripping, disgusting, bloody jaw.
Yep.
Repeating everything he hears, whether it's the sounds coming from Nido or the protestations of Chad.
Yep.
It was weird that guy was in jail and not being given medical attention.
Yes.
That was
very
notable, strange thing.
I think he was just credited as drunk as well.
Mm.
I saw people speculate that maybe that was Billy, but that's not what the credits confirm.
Yeah, I had the same thought watching it, but I don't obviously.
I mean, maybe we'll know.
Anything. Yeah,
we're now at a point. Speaking of that, actually, people used the credits early on in season 3 to name characters and to figure out who people were. But as the
before there was any way to know from the text of the show.
However, as the season's gone on, there have been characters who have been renamed or had last names added onto them, or who went from unknown characters to named characters over the course of the season. So even though that guy's named Drunk now, he might be named someone else.
He may well be Billy. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way that all those characters played off each other was good. It was actually. Were you reminded of the scene in early Twin Peaks when Bobby was in jail barking like a dog in those same
Bobby
cells?
and Mike.
Yeah, Bobby and Mike.
Yeah.
Just that weird animal sounds coming from people.
Yep.
Also, that guy repeating
to
everything.
unsettle another person in jail, basically.
The guy with the blood dripping out of his face, repeating anything that anyone else said and seeming to have no consciousness beyond that, was obviously evocative of Dougie, who does that. So maybe that guy's he's actually Billy, but Billy's in the lodge right now and turned into a ball and whatever.
So we from that we cut to the Great Northern and learn that James and his English pal Freddie are security guards employed by the Great Northern.
Yep.
And
Freddie has a weird situation.
And we learn this outrageous story about Freddie and his gardening, his permanently attached gardening glove, to which he was led by the being we now know as the fireman. And which gives his right hand the power of a pile driver. He was told to come to Twin Peaks, Washington, where he will find his destiny. And here he is, working as a security guard with James and telling his delightful tales in a ridiculous Cockney accent. I don't understand why this man was cast the way he was. Do
you want to know why that man was cast the way he was? Oh, it's a good story. It's good. I looked this up. He was cast because he does YouTube videos that went viral about all of the accents that he can do, and David Lynch saw one.
Not knowing that about him, I did not find it a particularly convincing accent. I mean, I'm sure he's got, given what you just said, I'm sure he's got great breadth. I'm sure he can do a lot of different accents vaguely convincingly, but I was not convinced by this specific one, I must say. It kind of reminded me of Ian Buchanan.
He was born in the East End of London in 1992, says his website.
Yep. Well, then he's just playing it up in a way that I you know what, that actually does kind of remind me even more than of Ian Buchanan as Dick Tremaine, because Dick Tremaine what is he supposed to be? He's supposed to be English, right?
Maybe
the character. The actor who plays him is Scottish, and I remember seeing him in that show and thinking, God, this feels like a total put-on accent, and it is.
It is
a Scottish accent.
But he has a different accent.
Very different than the accent he's doing in the show, but it's from a place that is, he would have obviously grown up knowing probably a lot of English people and hearing that accent a lot. But the weird effect felt like Uncanny Valley to me. And so does this one, even though I guess it's not. I guess it's real. So I don't know.
I mean, I don't know if he has that accent in real life. I'm sure he does not.
That accent. I feel like he's putting it on. But anyway, my point is kind of that it actually sort of fits into the like existing existing possibilities.
Talking about I mean, it's
accents
like
of Great Britain.
I can't remember where this sort of sentiment where I first read it. It might have been in a poem, but the idea that like when you turn 12, you're not just 12 years old. You're also the you who was 11 and 10 and 9 and 8 are still inside of you. And I was saying that at the beginning of this episode. Twin Peaks season 2 is still inside of Twin Peaks season 3,
it is definitely still,
including Freddie, the green gloved guy.
The green gloved Cockney pile driver.
When we were watching this, and he showed up, Dana, my wife, said, "Oh, he's just going to arm wrestle Mr. C."
That right. I mean,
what else is he there for?
Yeah,
last episode we see an outrageous.
We get eyes punched out of a skull, basically.
And this time we have a character with ridiculous. So I saw someone on the forums. I think they were saying this derisively, and I'm sure that it won't happen, but it totally cracked me up. They said, "Oh well, he's going to team up with Nadine, and they're just." And they're going to just go to war against Mr. C and the Woodsman armed with golden shovels. Like, that's the end of this. It's going to be like a Game of Thrones or Walking Dead ending where all of our super strength characters tie in with this stupid MacGuffin golden shovel and then beat the shit out of a bunch of supernatural characters.
Twin Peaks now unequivocally, canonically features 3 different characters with super strength in their arms.
I know.
That is a fact.
Yeah, we're gearing up for what is the true finale of the Twin Peaks cinematic universe that fans have been craving for years, the team-up event.
Oh, man. Wow.
It all belongs. When the Woodsmen show up and take over Dr. Jacoby's radio show, Nadine, his number one fan and customer, and this green-handed super strength guy have to go take him out. It's canon.
Yeah,
it might be.
I mean, it may well. It wouldn't shock me.
The odds of the Woodsman showing up on Jacoby's radio show, not 0.
Well, we'll see. Anyway, so James asks him, "Wow, why you?" And Freddie says, "Why me?" And then in his accounting, the fireman says, "Why not you?" Why not him? Indeed.
It's weird that he has a crystal clear memory of this event, whereas most people don't remember any of this stuff.
It may well be I mean, sure, but who knows? It may well be the case that he didn't remember that. Like he remembered bits of it as he was acting them out, and I don't know. Who knows?
Also, another example of the world getting much smaller. This random character also was visited by the Giant and told to go to Twin Peaks and given a super strength arm.
I know.
Everything's
right?
related.
Yeah.
If Nadine goes, "Oh man, I had a dream, and then I had super strength." Like
that's true. That's true. In one sense, this is very Twin Peaks in the sort of ways that I was saying earlier, and in another sense, it is very much a break with how Twin Peaks would have done this in the past.
Yes,
which would have been just, here's a wacky character.
Nadine just regressed to a teenager and gets super strength, and we're never told why, and it's just another. Who knows where that came from or where it could lead? Yeah. It doesn't matter. It just sort of loops into the story and out. Whereas, this case,
in this, we are told
everything
verbally
is connected.
Exactly why.
Speaking of everything is connected, James then goes into the warehouse of the Great Northern because. Yeah. Why does he go in there?
Oh, because it's his job. He has to check the furnaces.
Oh, he just has to check the furnaces, but then he hears what sounds like the same weird hum.
Yeah,
the
ringing hum,
the ringing hum that Ben, is it Beverly? Ben and Beverly had heard.
Ben and Bev.
And then he starts to follow it to a door, and then we cut dramatically. That location seemed familiar to me when I saw it, and then I went on the forums, and other people said it seemed familiar to them because it reminded them of the end of the European version of the Twin Peaks pilot.
Wow.
Which
deep cut.
And I'm not sure if it's literally the same location, like if they shot that up in the Pacific Northwest, but it there's like a extra 15 minutes or so of the Twin Peaks pilot that was shot. Maybe it's a half hour, I'm not sure, but whatever. There's extra time from the original Twin Peaks pilot that was shot for release in Europe as a TV movie in which they encounter both Mike and Bob, not as supernatural lodge spirit / doppelgangers as we know them now, but just sort of kind of as two guys who have some weird connection to the dream that Cooper has. But they go and try to arrest Bob in what I think is the basement of the hospital, and it is this crazy boiler room full of big yellow pipes and steam emitting things, and he's got a little circle of dirt on the floor that has one half of the friendship necklace in it, I think, and as they're about to arrest him, Mike pushes past them and shoots Bob in the head. And that location, which never appears in mainline Twin Peaks under any circumstances, looks so much like this that I wonder if they went back and just used that same
really
location because they were in the same
interesting.
town or
Yeah.
what.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't. I didn't go online to look up enough whether or not people had positively identified it as the same space. Like, I tried to take some screenshots, but the angles, it's hard to tell. The angles and lighting
Sure.
are so different that I
Yeah.
feel like the support poles relative to some of the big devices are the same. But either way, if it is the same set, there's no way it was meant to be the same location, because in this case it's the basement of the Great Northern, and in the pilot it was the basement, I think, of the hospital, of the morgue.
Yeah.
But whatever. It
Yeah,
was
it's interesting.
it was an interesting.
I mean, that's the kind of thing that Lynch loves generally,
Oh,
whether
yeah.
or not it has a direct plot
Yeah.
sort of connection. Whatever even means to have a plot connection, because that episode is not...
Get ready though, if that is the same location, to see footage from the European pilot come back where we get a glimpse of Bob hiding in that basement.
Yeah, right. God.
Anyway,
That would be crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Regardless, that was we're characters between Andy and James. We now have characters who, I mean, I guess it's happening to Ben and Beverly as well. A lot of characters in this season of Twin Peaks who never touched on any of these parts of the world
Definitely, yeah.
are now
Yeah.
creeping increasingly close to it.
Yep, for sure.
I guess that's a good way to transition to Sarah Palmer.
Yeah, that's very well said. So, yeah, Sarah Palmer at the Elks Point number 9 bar.
Yep.
I like that name, and I like the sign.
Yeah, we got a new Twin Peaks neon sign, bar sign.
Yep. Yeah, she orders a Bloody Mary. Guy at the end of a bar in a ponytail and a cap, wearing a shirt that says "Truck You," sees her.
Did you think that was Leo for half a second?
No, that never occurred to me. That's funny, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then I had to go, oh yeah, he's not in this.
no. He comes over to her, gives her a bunch of, hassles her a whole bunch.
Yeah,
she
kind
says,
of just starts basically propositioning her, and then
right, and then having just an immediate, like, aggressive reaction
Yeah.
to her disinterest. She replies, "I'll eat you," which is an incredible. I had to immediately rewind that because she delivers it really.
Yeah.
She downplays the delivery.
So
and I had
good.
to immediately back up 10 seconds to be, did I just hear what
Yeah.
that was? Oh my God. That she opens her face in the manner that we've now seen.
That Laura did.
Laura did, and says, "Do you really want to fuck with this?"
Yeah.
Just, oh my God. Yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of David Lynch referring back to things from his own work, did you see the picture of his painting?
There's like his weird sort of digital work from 2013. What was it called? It was like just
David Lynch. It was Head Number 2.
okay.
Yeah, from 2013. It's not identical. It's different sort of composition and
It's sort of that aesthetic of Lynch art, though, the sort
Yes.
of black and white, sort of vaguely orb face with weirdly specific other features. Like it,
Right.
That art is kind of just a gray blobby head with a very clean mouth, but it looks lit and sort of contrasted in black and white in a way that's very similar to the thing inside of Sarah Palmer's head.
right, and also just the idea of like the full silhouette and shape of a head with the face being composited in.
Yeah.
Generally, yeah, it's very. Oh, and there's a hand in
Yeah.
this picture, which also there's a hand inside
of her.
in the show, inside of the like cavity. in
And then
her
there's those
head.
weird sort of tendril thing that
Yeah.
comes out and hits him in the neck,
Yeah.
which could have been a finger or leg or like pincher. People had speculated when we saw that stuff in episode 8 or in part 8 of the roach toad, of the weird bug that crawls into the girl's mouth. People had said, "Oh, could that be Sarah Palmer?"
I don't.
I don't.
Yeah,
this
maybe, I don't know.
lends more credence to those things being connected.
It
but,
doesn't
but
feel
but they feel
like
yeah.
anything to me, but maybe. I mean, I've absolutely no way to know.
This is one of those things where seeing it was completely surprising and terrifying, and
Yeah.
the performances were all really good. I'm curious to worried about what this means
Me too.
for how they're retconning the character of
know,
Sarah
I know.
Palmer, because
Yeah.
I've liked her story as it exists so far, and they're treading on some really, really dangerous waters with what this means about the sort of story of Leland Palmer and Sarah Palmer and Laura Palmer as a family in Fire Walk with Me and stuff.
Yeah. That said, it's given the sort of sounds in her kitchen before, the way that she's been playing, all of that, like this could be a total like recent development,
right? Or
I hope it's not a retcon. I hope it's not suggesting something about her that's always been. I don't know. Whatever. It's not. I don't want to actually spend a lot of time speculating about it.
There's no way to speculate. We'll either know explicitly what this means within 4 hours, or this will just be a very strange thing that's added to the tapestry of Twin Peaks.
But totally outside of the context of like what it means for the history of this character. Just in terms of what is on the screen in this episode. Can't really say it enough because I say it every time she's on screen, but man, Grace Zabriskie, amazing.
Yeah.
I really feel like she played this in her just total low-key menace when she says, "I'll eat you," going to then the face opens.
It's crazy.
She like explodes the guy's neck and then immediately screams, freaks out in a way that was so convincing that I was like, oh, is she not even conscious of what just happened?
I don't think she is.
Well, I don't know, because I don't think that's true, because so she freaks out in a really convincing way, really, really convincing. Bartender comes over and is like, what the hell happened? And then she over the next 10 seconds or so, she kind of morphs from total incredulous.
She gets a little more sly about it.
Yeah, and then by the end of that scene, she's looking at him dead on and saying, "Sure is a mystery, huh?"
Yeah, no,
it is not a mystery to her. Definitely, I thought it was amazing. Her total arc in that scene, I thought she just utterly destroyed it. It was amazing.
It is really reminiscent of the ways of sort of late era Leland Palmer was.
Yeah, where he gets the sly.
It felt like there were two people inside of Leland Palmer pulling him around, and how much of it was two separate entities and how much of it was a cocktail was unknown, in part because when he would spike and do something crazy, it felt like a different side of Leland would do a similar thing to this, where it would assert himself and he'd freak out, and then sort of slowly blend back into the mixture of them both being there and him, adjusting his tie in the mirror or walking away from the scene. And that's not to say that what's happening with Sarah Palmer is the exact same thing that happened with Leland Palmer or with Leland, but it's the second time that we've seen that style of sort of duality and sort of swirling versions of good and evil, and the actors totally just nailing it.
But what's cool is that, and again, I'm speaking totally unrelated. I don't want to speculate about what it means for the plot or characters or anything, but just purely in terms of what's on screen and in terms of the actors' performances. It's a very different take on it than what Ray Wise does. Ray Wise has this, which is also wonderful. It's equally wonderful in different ways. This sort of he swings between the kind of melodramatic, hysterical father and the sort of sly, almost prankster, mischievous devil, whereas Grace Zabriskie swings between almost three different sort of triangular points, which is the sort of hysterical, grieving mother, which is not as present in this season because it's been so many years.
No, but her response in the bar was kind of evocative of that.
Was from drawing from that segment. The totally dead, inside and outside, kind of just numb to the world figure, and then the quiet menace, dead looking in the eye, and
and we sort of saw all three of those in that moment when she wakes up, when she freaks out and then sort of recesses down into being quiet and then swings slowly into the the sort of creepily menacing, slightly sly version.
And it's just a different take on it than Ray Wise does, and always has been. If you go back to the original run of the show, Ray Wise always played all parts of his character as more over the top and a bigger, sort of more screen character, and it worked perfectly for the character of Leland Palmer. Whereas, again, going all the way back to the original run of the show, Grace Zabriskie has always played all these modes in a much more naturalistic, raw way that it was terrifying for how real and unvarnished and unscreen acting it was. And they've always played those in very different ways, and they're both wonderful, and it's incredible to see her take that exact same method but then expand it out a little bit to fit this new weird dimension of her character that we don't have any way to yet understand, but it's just, I think it's incredible. I think she is given how little time in total she has. I mean, most characters on this season have very little time to do anything with, but
her stuff is so potent,
she
though.
is just, man, I just can't give her enough praise. I think it's amazing. Also, just as a note, I wonder if Ray Wise is going to be in this show anymore.
I feel like there's almost no way we don't see one more Ray Wise scene.
Right? I mean,
I don't think that there's going to be very many times when a character only shows up once in this, other than maybe Wally Brando and...
yeah, sure. There are a number of other sort of pseudo cameos, but yeah.
Yeah, the Ray Wise one just didn't feel like a cameo. Leland Palmer, it seems like that was setting up one of the longest loops of the show that's probably not going to come back till the end. Maybe it won't come back at all. You're right. Maybe it won't. But
no, I don't know.
That stuff with...
I'm not declaring it won't.
The stuff with Laura and Leland Palmer with Cooper right before he gets ejected out into his journey back to Earth it seemed like something that was put there specifically to come back around.
Yeah. I agree, but we'll see.
Yep.
So the episode concludes, as often it does, in the Roadhouse, in which we see both new characters?
Yep, two new characters talking about, in this case, we've seen many sets of new characters talking about random characters in the Roadhouse.
Yeah.
In this case, we see that again, but the characters are talking about are vaguely meaningful because they're talking about Tina and Billy,
right,
who are the characters that Audrey and her husband Charlie were talking about in the two scenes that we've seen them have. So,
and Tina is the mother of one of these women, the one who sort of tells this whole story.
Yes.
So Megan, Tina's daughter, explains this episode in which Billy jumps over a 6-foot fence at their house, runs into the kitchen, bleeding profusely. The whole thing lasts 10 seconds. He leaves again. Kind of makes I don't know. Maybe Billy is the guy in jail. I don't know.
Maybe so.
It's who knows.
And what we also know is that from a couple episodes ago.
I mean, they do say there's blood everywhere.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know.
Yep. Chuck in those Audrey scenes, Chuck told Audrey that Tina was the last person to see him, and then Chuck calls Tina, and we don't know what that conversation was.
What happened,
but that feels like a cohesive enough story now that the Audrey story, it's been whatever that insanity was has been vaguely now verified by two characters in the Roadhouse. Still, all of this is disconnected entirely from anything else in the series of Twin Peaks.
I mean, I assume your implication is that she's probably not in a coma. Which
she's not. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think she is.
Yeah, but why we're seeing any of this stuff and what it has to do with anything, still
we do not know.
Wholly unknown.
Yeah, we do not know.
Even if Billy's the guy in the jail, so what? That's
we don't know what any of that means.
If you think of this as one huge jigsaw puzzle, and it's either floating off on its own, or there's one jigsaw piece that has a little bit of a guy bleeding blood that connects, and then otherwise it's still an island on its own, unconnected to the rest of the puzzle.
Yeah, we do not know. We do not know. Yeah, I just don't know. Anyway, the Roadhouse is proud to welcome Lisi.
Yes.
So now we have 3 proud to welcomes, right? Because we had the 9 Inch Nails, we had James Hurley, and now we have Lisi.
Yep.
As the proud to be introduced.
Yep.
And that's it. That was the episode.
It was dedicated to David Bowie in the credits.
That's right. Yeah. All right. So, man, we talked about this episode for a long time.
It had a lot to talk about.
There was a lot to talk about.
It was a fun episode to watch, and it's a fun episode to talk about.
I agree. All right. Well, thank you for listening to Twin Peaks Rewatch. Our website is twinpeaksrewatch.com, and there you can subscribe to the show. You can find links to where we can be found on the internet. You can find a link to our forums. The Twin Peaks Rewatch forums on the Idol forums is a really great place to discuss every episode of Twin Peaks to date, including episodes of The Return as they air. They're really, really good threads. Lots of activity, really cool observations, discussions. speculations, theories. It's just it is a very great collection of discussion. I would highly recommend it. You can find a link on every single episode on TwinPeaksRewatch.com to its episode thread. If you like the show, you can recommend it to a friend as we are wrapping up the run of Twin Peaks: The Return. We're getting pretty close. Only a few weeks left.
Yeah, there's actually there's 4 episodes left, but there are 3 weeks left because there's episode 15 and 16, then week to week, and then 17, 18 is aired as a double feature at the end. I think it's probably safe to say at this point that we're going to do an episode for 17, 18, and then much like we've done at the middle of this season and when we finished our first rewatch, we'll do one more wrap-up episode. Yeah. So we haven't had a lot of time for reader mail in these episodes because there's been so much to talk about, but please keep sending email in to twinpeaks@idlethumbs.net, and even if we don't get a whole lot of it in the next few weeks, we'll definitely do a sort of conversation with mailbag episode at the end of the season.
Yeah, that'd be great. So, I guess that's it. TwinPeaksRewatch.com for all of this information. And thanks to everyone watching us on YouTube. We've found a YouTube audience for this show that we've never had before. And it's
Hi,
been really
YouTube.
Fun. Hey, YouTube. All right. We will be back next week for Idle Thumbs. I am Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
Bye.